All right. So, with the first transfer portal session kind of starting to wrap up, come to a close, you're going to see Oklahoma's final additions potentially be made over the next week, maybe even two. But Oklahoma has potentially two big roster additions, two guys that I'm watching. Today, I want to talk about the portal updates for Oklahoma, give you guys a little intel on who you guys should be watching, who you should be paying attention to, and we're going to dive into it. We're going to talk about it. So join the discussion, jump down in the comments below. Give me your thoughts. If you guys haven't already, you're new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that like and you hit that subscribe button. Let me know who you guys think Oklahoma needs to go hit in the transfer portal. All right. So Oklahoma has the potential to now make two big time portal moves, and they're going to be big additions to their team if Oklahoma is able to pull this off and add these guys to their team. And I'm not going to bury the lead here. The first one that I am talking about today is Tennessee defensive lineman Jason Jenkins, who is entering the transfer portal per his sports agency, APS Sports Agency, and 247 Sports. Now, Jason Jenkins is a guy that he hasn't been like one of the defined starters at the University of Tennessee, but when you look at the numbers, he, especially this past season, played a decent role in that defensive line for Tennessee. Past season, 9 total tackles, 3 solos, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. When you go and you look at his grades according to PFF, the dude graded out pretty well against some of the better teams in the SEC, like a Georgia, right? He had a 73.3 defensive grade, a 74.4 run defensive grade, and a 74.1 tackling grade in that game. You go to the Alabama game, he didn't fare as well as he did. It was actually probably one of his worst games of the season. But you go to Ohio State, the game they just played in the playoffs, a 60.4 defensive grade, a 60.3 rush defensive grade against an Ohio State offensive line that is pretty stout, an offensive line that's pretty good. His best game of the season was against Mississippi State, where he had a pass rush grade of 93, which is absolutely incredible, and an overall defensive grade of 89.8. So you look at what Jason Jenkins could bring to Oklahoma. You know that Miguel Chavis and Todd Bates are interested. You know they're reaching out. This would be a big-time portal addition for Oklahoma, and it's one that I fully expect Oklahoma to continue to kick the tires around on, especially since they're not, necessarily hitting big dudes right now on the portal for the defensive line. I think they're coming, but that's where we're going to transition. We're going to transfer to the end. We're going to transition to interior defensive linemen a little bit. We're going to talk about these are targets, not necessarily guys that I think are going to land here just yet, because the intel does not necessarily follow Oklahoma 100% here like it does some other guys. But obviously, one of the guys we're watching is David Gusta, 6'3", 302 pounds. He's from Washington State. This is a guy that's gained actually a lot of attention in the transfer portal. And if you look at it, he's had some decent production over the past couple of years at Washington State. This year, 21 total tackles, 13 solos, 1 sack. He had a half a sack last year, but he has 4 pass breakups in his career. So not only is this a guy that can get to the quarterback and cause havoc that way, but this is a guy that, he gets in the quarterback's face and potentially causes those pass breakups and balls batted down at the line. Look at David Gusto's grades on the defensive side of the ball. This year, his best grades were against San Jose State. But overall, this was a guy that when you look at the PFF grades, he graded out pretty well. Like, this is a guy that no matter what game he played, who he was playing, like, it was pretty consistent across the board. So you look at David Gusto as a guy that Oklahoma, I think, would be interested in if they didn't get a guy like James Thompson Jr., who we're going to talk about here in a second. But David Gusto, I know the BYU's in there, so we'll just have to keep an eye out for what's going to happen to him. But talking about his counterpart, right, and what would cause him to potentially come to Oklahoma and be a primary target, James Thompson Jr., who's a senior, so he's only going to have 1 year of eligibility left, 6'5", 295 pounds, 29 total tackles in 2023. 19 solos, 3 sacks. As you can see in his career, 2 sacks in 2022, 1 fumble recovery. Again, you go look at this guy's PFF grades. This season only played in 7 total defensive snaps, and it was at Nebraska in week 13. But overall, when you look at his season grades in 23 and in 2022, this was a guy that was very consistent, and he's played over 932 career snaps while at Wisconsin. So I look at James Thompson, and although, again, the intel's kind of light here on whether or not he's going to land in Oklahoma, it seems like it's a pretty quiet camp out there. What Oklahoma is going to do at the defensive line position is very interesting, because I know, and I've heard of guys that are at some SEC schools that are on the interior defensive line that Oklahoma is recruiting that could potentially hit the portal. And if they do, these are guys that I expect Oklahoma to 100% try to go after and be in the mix for, because they got multiple years of eligibility, and these are guys that Todd Bates believed in on the recruiting trail. Now, the second big roster addition that I'm kind of watching and waiting to see, when does this come down? Does it come down? And does it land in Oklahoma's favor? The true freshman out of Washington State, Ethan O'Connor. If you guys remember, we've talked about him quite a bit. 6'1", 172 pounds. This season, 23 total tackles, 4 interceptions, 8 pass breakups. This dude is an absolute monster and gives you a lot of the Eli Bowen vibes. And again, similar to his teammate David Gusta, you look at the grades, and he graded out fairly well against most of the competition that he played. Obviously, I think it could clean up a little bit in the tackling, but man, his coverage grades, this is what you're looking for. He's an 89.6 in here. He has some a lot in the 70s. He's got a couple in the 60s and the 50s, one in the 40s, but Ethan O'Connor is a guy that he's only going to get better, and he's got size. He's 6'1". So not only is he athletic and he's got the ability to play big-time ball here at Oklahoma, but he's got the athleticism that you're looking for and the size that you're looking for if you're Jay Valai. Remember, I was told by somebody that Jay Valai was told not to take anybody smaller than 6 foot in the transfer portal this year. So if you notice a theme that Oklahoma's looking at with some of these cornerbacks in the transfer portal, they're all sizable. Now, what's going to happen if we don't land Ethan O'Connor? Because Ethan O'Connor's a guy that Miami's pretty heavily involved. Ohio State's obviously in there. Who do you go after and pivot to if you don't land him? Because right now, it's probably a 50-50 shot. Tacario Davis. He's 6'4", 190 pounds. His junior this year. He'll have 1 year of eligibility left. But this is a guy that he's been highly productive in college. This is a guy, if he puts it together, he's probably a first-round corner, because he's got the intangibles to do it. You look at this past season, 43 total tackles, 28 solos. He had 6 pass breakups. 2023 was definitely his best year in terms of what he did in the coverage space with 15 pass breakups. But again, this is another guy where you look at his grades, and he's pretty consistent. He's a really good tackler. He goes against some of the better wide receivers against the teams that he's going to go against. He's only allowing a 54% catch rate. He's didn't allow a single touchdown this year on him. Didn't allow a single touchdown. So Tacario Davis is a guy where right now you're looking at him and going, might go to the NFL draft, might pull his name out of the portal, return to Arizona. Remember, he entered last year and then ended up pulling his name and returning to Arizona. So I think he probably returns or goes to the NFL draft right now, unless Oklahoma probably pursues him as hard as I think they're pursuing Ethan O'Connor. And quite frankly, in my opinion, I think you should probably look at taking both, because there's no guarantee that Gentry Williams, if he comes back, is going to be 100% that dude for you and somebody that you can rely on week in and week out. And I think all of these guys can play for you in the SEC at some level. So you look at this kind of recruiting report, or not really recruiting report, but transfer portal report for Oklahoma. I'm looking at 2 big roster additions, Ethan O'Connor, and then you've got Jason Jenkins. These are 2 guys that I believe that could end up at Oklahoma, and if they do, they make Oklahoma's defense that much better, which is crazy to think because Oklahoma's defense was just that good this past season. So if you're an OU fan, you guys have not already, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Give me your guys' thoughts. We'll see you guys tomorrow.